Well, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I am a little sad right now. A little more under the radar than usual. Sometimes I can get a little animated, but not because the movie was bad, not because I'm disappointed. It was just kind of sad, start to finish. So I have a feeling this is gonna be a shorter video than some of the other ones, just because, like I said, this movie is very good, and I usually have a lot more to say about movies that are bad. And speaking of the rest of my series, if you want to subscribe to my channel and check out those videos, I'd really appreciate it. And of course, like this video if you're enjoying my style and whatnot, and I'd really appreciate that as well. Okay, let's jump back into Logan. But we'll just jump straight into some numbers here like I like to do. And ring the alarm, we have a huge success. Oh, you know what? Nah, first we gotta cue the music. As is customary in AP Entertainment, we gotta rest in peace to a beloved character. Last week we had to put Rhaenys to rest in House of the Dragon, and now, for me as a viewer, I gotta lay Logan, aka James, aka the Wolverine himself, to rest. Until a couple of weeks when he's back on the big screen, but for now, we're gonna lay him to rest. A very nice send-off to a character that I did not know much about just a couple weeks ago. Okay, now we're gonna jump in to some numbers. Now we can ring the alarm. Success, box office, $620 million, which is about 200 million more than the Wolverine, which made about 40 million more than X-Men Origins Wolverine. So this was by far the biggest success of the trilogy, and it's ironic because you guys know I also like bringing up how much Hugh Jackman got paid to be in these solo movies. I couldn't find an exact number. Everyone just said he took a massive pay cut for this film because they had it rated R, and historically rated R movies just don't do as well at the box office because the audience window is smaller for rated R movies. Of course, it did much better than the other ones because with that R rating, they were able to tell a proper and a true Wolverine story. Now, if I had to guess, our man Hugh Jackman probably had some type of points or percentage built into his contract, so he probably ended up doing pretty well because of how good the box office did, but his straight up salary was the lowest of the trilogy. And now for Rotten Tomatoes, and I mean, these are just stellar numbers for a standalone comic book movie. 93% certified fresh from the critics. Getting an over 90 on a comic book film from the critics is one of the true marvels of the world, or wonders of the world if you can pull it off. So congrats to the team on that. And a 90% audience score. So a great comic book movie actually had a lower audience score. And Logan became the first, and I believe still the only comic book movie to get a nomination at the Oscars for Best Adapted Screenplay, so that just really shows how fire this script was. So similar to pretty much everyone that I've seen that critiques these X-Men Fox movies, The Wolverine, the 2013 film, is pretty much completely ignored. Not much taken from that one, but there are a lot of callbacks from X-Men Origins, the 2009 film, which I actually really appreciated as someone who's doing this rewatch series. For instance, again, now this was in the Wolverine as well, but the movie starts with Logan yet again being a recluse, but this time instead of being up in the Canadian wilderness, he's actually in Mexico, out in the boonies, and during the day he's a Uber driver in southern, I think it's New Mexico, it might be Texas. Let me check real quick. Indeed, it was Texas, El Paso. So, like I said, we started in a familiar place, which I kind of appreciated as a nice callback. And from there, it is in this recluse hideout in Mexico where we learn that Logan is not the only major X-Men in this movie. Professor X himself, Patrick Stewart, is reprising his role, and he is an old man. I read he's 97 in this movie, not as an actor, but the character. And there's one other X-Men named Caliban who's hanging out with them as well, and his power is he can track other mutants. But there are no mutants left, at least as far as they know. So they're in hiding because there was a major event a year ago where Professor X, he's got dementia now, and he can't control his powers, and there was this big episode where the rest of the X-Men died at his hand by accident. So they're in hiding, and Wolverine is trying to protect him. So we established that Logan is capable of being a protector. Now he's a very gruff protector because he's a protector of an old man who he almost views as like a father or grandfather figure. So we just got to get him into that protective state for another character later in the film, which ends up being really the main plot. You guys have seen the movie. I'm not going to go through the whole plot. He ends up being in charge of a girl named Laura, who's actually like a younger version of him because they have his DNA, and this lab is recreating mutants to try to, from birth, to try to control as soldiers. Doesn't go well because they can't actually control the human spirit, so instead they end up just cloning Logan, and he fights a younger version of himself later in the film. And at the end, he ends up getting Laura and the other mutants to safety in Canada, and he dies fighting. And he is actually dead. At least he's supposed to be, because he is on screen again in a couple weeks for Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, what version of Wolverine that is, I can't say yet, but I am looking forward to seeing if... I mean, actually, obviously, you can tell it's not this version of Logan because he's old. And in this upcoming movie, it looks like Hugh Jackman's current age. So if I had to guess, he is pulled time travel-wise from one of the other X-Men films. More callbacks or similarities to X-Men Origins that I really appreciated. In the middle of the film, Wolverine ends up at a farm with a really nice family, just like in X-Men Origins. And just like in X-Men Origins, the whole family gets whacked, all because he is there. And this is the other thing, I complimented X-Men Origins Wolverine for the brutality and the realness of the deaths and the fights. Woo-wee! Did they take that and turn it up another notch? This is by far the most savage comic book movie ever made. So props to them. They definitely earned that R rating. If you're going to cross the line to get that R rating, you might as well make it worth it. And they definitely did. And of course, for his swan song, his final battle, we get to see Logan in his native Wolverine territory in the woods, getting pumped, shooting himself with some syrup, getting all in it, and going straight to work. One of my biggest critiques of the Wolverine was the man couldn't fight. I was like, I thought this man had the hand-to-hand combat skills. He was getting worked continuously in that movie. Not in this one. His fighting abilities are much more similar to X-Men Origins. That's why I keep saying I feel like they purposely just forgot about that second movie. It really was just there to set up the second trilogy X-Men movies and why Wolverine would even be in those. That's really why that movie was made, in my opinion. But it's actually ironic because that movie had the same director as this one. You would assume, oh, they brought the director from the first one back to like kind of get the spirit of the character back in there. At least in my opinion. Hey, look, if you like the Wolverine, more power to you. Like art's suggestive, film is suggestive, subjective as is film. And there are people out there that have way more interest and love for these X-Men stories than I do. But I'm just saying, for me, I just don't think that's a good film, and I didn't think it was true to the character. So I really liked how they really focused more on what we saw in the Origins movie. But yeah, man, this movie just does not pull any punches. Like, the entire team dies, just making sure. Professor X dies. I cannot remember this man's name. Caliban dies. Logan dies. The whole nice family at the farm dies, all to make sure Laura and the rest of the mutants can get to safety. After the first third of the film, I also started getting major vibes of like, man, I feel like this was really the tone and the type of film that they were going to go for with the Ben Affleck solo Batman movie. Like a very older Batman, kind of over it, doesn't want to be doing this anymore, one last ride. Obviously, that was a little different because it still would have been, the Justice League movies still would have followed it, but I feel like that's the type of tone and vibe they're going for, and it still kills me that that movie never got made because there's no doubt in my mind it would have been great just like this one. And one last thing I want to shout out, because I just really appreciated it, was how meta the movie was with having actual physical X-Men comics in the movie, and Wolverine's going through the pages and he's like, oh, this is fiction, this is made up, this isn't how it really happened. There's no Eden, it's a fake place. And it kind of reminded me of the HBO series Adams, about John Adams, and how towards the end of the series, the guy that paints the famous painting of the Declaration of Independence being signed, and John Adams rolls up and he hates the painting because he's like, this isn't how it happened. We weren't all here at the same time. We weren't sitting over here. It was like old man rambling stuff, and it kind of reminded me of that, and it kind of made Logan even more relatable as like a human character to me. But yeah, in all, it's a good film. It is grade time. I'm sorry, it's a great film, and it is grade time. You know, just by how I talked about it, and I know a lot of people would have this in the A range. This is no disrespect to this movie. I gotta go B plus, and that is a damn good grade for me. Just to recap, X-Men Origins Wolverine, I gave a C plus. The Wolverine a D plus, and I believe Deadpool was a B plus. Some people love that movie too. So these are two straight B pluses, and I think the main thing holding it back from getting that A range was, for me, the villains were a little cookie cutter, a little bland. For, you know, the big final finale of the Wolverine, story-wise it made sense, but just like, okay, there's these people, they're once again trying to make sure that all the mutants are dead. This has been a theme in a lot of these movies, and the big bad is just him fighting a younger version of himself that's a clone. Again, story-wise, it made sense. Like, as a plot, it made sense. The movie, the editing in this movie was great, unlike the first one. I've been complimenting the first one a lot, but for the spirit of the character, but the movie itself is kind of a mess. This editing was almost flawless, but just as like a wow factor, the villains were still a little basic for me, and I think that's what held it back from being a completely captivating A movie. But still, B plus is a really good grade for me. And I really enjoyed watching this film. I only got one left. It's hard to believe. Deadpool 2 is next. Well, then, actually, there's still two left. Because, of course, this whole series ends with me going to see Deadpool and Wolverine in theaters, which was the point of the whole series in the first place. Thank you guys, as always, for joining me. Let me know in the comments what you thought about Logan. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks again, and I will see you guys next time.